Hey guys, I'm Ivory, and today's video is going to be a 2-day wear test on the Smashbox Studio Skin Full Coverage 24-Hour Foundation. That is a mouthful. I'm going to be showing you how it applies initially, as well as checking in throughout the day to show you how it wears. For anyone that's new here, I have oily and acne prone skin, so my wear tests are catered towards people with similar skin types. And if you find that this review is helpful, I will link up here a playlist of all the other foundations that I have tried. Wear tests are my favorite videos to do, and I know you guys love when I do them. So after this video, feel free to look at other wear tests that I've done because I've gone through a lot. Before we get into the review, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I post new videos every single week, and also be sure to follow me on my social media. Everything is _ivorypcherry. So I'm going to quickly break down each of the days because I don't do the exact same things on day 1 and day 2. But if you're already familiar with the format of my wear test, I'll put somewhere on the screen the timestamp for the first day. So on the first day, which is today, half of my face I'm using primer, and then the other half, the foundation is just going on my bare skin. In addition to that, half of my face I use a microfiber sponge, and then the other half of my face I use a brush. And then depending on how it looks at the end of the day, I will take what works from this day and apply it to the next day. And then on the second day, before I go in with foundation, I'm going to apply loose setting powder underneath. That is a trick that I have learned to help prolong my oils from coming through. I've also noticed that often it helps keep my foundation together, like I don't get cracking or separating nearly as much when I have powder underneath. But sometimes a foundation is just hopeless with or without powder underneath, so that's what we're going to be checking on the second day. And lastly, the second day, I will be showing you what the foundation looks like in natural lighting. Things look really different without softboxes and ring lights, so I wanted to show you a different perspective to show you what the foundation looks like without all that stuff. In my description box below, you'll find timestamps of each of the days, so feel free to skip around. I really don't mind. I don't want anyone wasting their time here. And that is it. So let's talk about the actual foundation now. This is what the bottle looks like. It is a squeezy tube, and this is what the applicator will look like. I do appreciate that the plastic here is completely transparent, not like frosted or anything, just so that it's really easy to color match. So like I said, in one side of my face I use primer. I use the L'Oreal Infallible Matte Lock Primer, and then on one side of my face I use a brush. I use the Sigma Round Kabuki, which is the F82, and then on the other side of my face I use a Juno & Co microfiber sponge. The foundation is a weightless 24-hour full coverage foundation with shine control that is also waterproof, sweat resistant, and won't look cakey or cause blemishes. The finish of it is matte, and the shade that I'm using is 3.02. The foundation contains 1 fluid ounce, which is pretty standard. It is cruelty free and retails for $36. So when I applied my foundation on my glass plate, I was portioning it out for my brush and my sponge. So I was gonna use that amount for the brush, and then squeeze the same amount and then use a sponge. But from that amount that I applied, I was able to cover my entire face. When I applied the first layer with the brush, I could tell right away it was going to be full coverage. I didn't want it to be cakey, so I worked in a really thin layer. But on the first layer, I would say that it was medium full. But when I used the sponge, the coverage was so amazing on the first layer. I didn't even go in with a second layer. This is all full coverage, one coat. So if I had to choose between applicators, I would use a sponge just because I didn't have to use a second layer. Although on the brush side, I did go in with 2 very thin coats, and the coverage is the same now. So I think both applicators will get you to full coverage, but if you're a person that only does 1 coat of foundation with the sponge side, everything will be full coverage in 1 layer for sure, whereas 1 layer of the brush will be medium full. So it's very close, but I can see the difference. This foundation reminds me of old me, because currently, you know, I'm in the phase of really liking satin, kind of natural-ish looking foundations. But when I first really started getting into makeup, and especially at the beginning stages of my channel, this is exactly the foundation that I would have loved. So it's definitely bringing me back. As of right now, this is still the first impressions, but I have been wearing this foundation for about 2 hours now. I really like the way that it looks. It doesn't feel heavy at all, especially since I only put 1 layer on this side. The skin of my acne usually is like crusty, and especially with matte foundations like this, it will cling onto it and it's gonna look like tissue paper. I don't see that happening. Everything looks pretty good as it can be. There are some areas where the foundation has settled into my wrinkles, such as right here on my forehead, but then there are other areas where it hasn't settled, like my smile line right here. Usually I'll see it. This is usually the first place I'll see it, but there's no settling there. It's only right here. But overall, I think it looks really good, and everything that it claims, you know, being full coverage, being lightweight, being matte, all of those things, I'm not going to dispute it. It's 100% true. So that is it for now. I will check in around the halfway point to show you how it is wearing. All right, we are at the 6-hour mark. I'm sorry if you can hear the heater in my background. Around 5 o'clock, the heater kicks in, and I wanted to turn it off, but my husband is cold, so it's it's non-negotiable. Now that my oils have come through a little bit, they've mixed with the powders and the foundation. I actually like the way this looks even more. On my smile line, it's starting to crease a little bit. It's super faint. I'm not mad about it, just because that is very common with even foundations that I really like. This crease I had in my forehead, it's more or less the same as it was at the 2-hour mark. Everywhere else though, like my cheeks, it's staying in place. The one issue I'm having is on my nose on this side. Hopefully you can see that the foundation has rubbed off a little bit. It's a little bit splotchy. However, it's not happening on this side, which is kind of weird. Also on my chin area, for the most part, I would say it looks pretty good. It looks a little bit textured, just the hair cakey. So tomorrow I definitely want to go lighter on the application in this area just to see if that remedies it. But other than, you know, the very few problematic areas such as my nose and my smile line, which by the way isn't really that bad, I would say that this foundation is looking really good. I'm liking the way that this looks. So that's it for this check-in. So I will check in a couple more hours. All right, it is now 9 hours later. This is completely unrelated to the video, but me and Steve just went to Outback for dinner and the waitress said she really liked my makeup and I was like, thanks. It made me so excited, so I wanted to share that with you guys. Since the 6-hour mark, I don't think a lot has changed. I guess if anything, that smile line is a little bit more prominent and it's starting to look a little bit oily on the sides of my nose. Everywhere else though, everything is stayed put and it looks the same. Maybe I'm a little bit shinier, but I don't think this looks bad. I really like the way that my base looks. As far as the side with primer versus no primer, in general, it didn't make a huge difference. However, now that I think about it, this side of my nose, like I said at the last check-in, the foundation is starting to separate a little bit, and on this side it's not. And at first I couldn't figure it out, but now that I think about it, the only difference between this other than applicators is the fact that this side has primer on it, so that has to be it. So I think only in terms of my nose it made a difference, and then everywhere else I can't see a difference. At this point I don't think it's necessary to blot. I'll go ahead and do it anyways. This is my last sheet from this pack. Every wear test that I do, I always use these. I've had these for over 2 years, and you know how I know that? Because I bought these for my wedding and I've been married over 2.5 years. But I'm gonna go ahead and blot half of my face just to see the difference. All right, so this half of my face is blotted. I actually prefer this side. I like the little subtle glow that it has. It just looks more skin-like, I guess. Like everything is more well incorporated with each other. If you can see on my nose, the blotting sheet picked it up a little bit. So on the sides of my nose, it's missing a little bit of foundation. And up here in my hairline, there are just like a couple patches missing. The nose and the forehead are the areas where the foundation looks the most worn. Everywhere else, like this cheek and the chin area, it looks pretty good. But if it were up to me, I would just not blot. I think 9 hours is pretty good in terms of wear time. So far, I'm really liking this foundation. I think it's very compatible with people with oily skin. The drawbacks that I'm seeing with this foundation is because the coverage is so full, I don't think that this is an everyday foundation. Like this is for like bridal, wedding, a heavy duty type of occasion. I do feel like certain areas look a little makeup-y. They may look good on camera right now, but tomorrow you'll probably see in person, it looks kind of heavy. And considering that I didn't apply that much, you know, you don't want to look like that on an everyday basis. So tomorrow I will definitely be applying primer because I do think it made a difference, specifically on my nose. And as far as coverage, I'm going to use a sponge again just because the coverage was really good and I only had to do 1 layer. So I'm going to do that tomorrow. But that is it for today. So good night. All right, it is day 2 of the wear test. I did go ahead and put primer underneath, but I wanted to test different primers today. I used the same primer that I used yesterday, which is the L'Oreal Infallible Matte Lock, and I switched sides because last time I put it on my right side, so I put it on my left. And then on the other side, I used the Smashbox Photo Finish. This used to be my favorite, and now I'm just not really on the primer bandwagon at all. But I know lots of people swear by primer, specifically this one, so I thought it'd be good to test between the two. And then I started applying the foundation with my microfiber sponge. 2 minutes into it, I realized I forgot to put primer underneath the foundation. I was so mad at myself. I've never forgotten to do that. On my phone, I was watching the Super Bowl halftime show and I got distracted. I was very enamored by J-Lo and Shakira's performance. So I got distracted. I just started applying foundation. I'm like, whoa, wait, I'm missing a step. I was a little annoyed, but mistakes happen. I had to wipe it off and then go back upstairs, wash the makeup wipe residue off my face, re-moisturize, wait 10 to 15 minutes, minutes and then do all the steps over again. By the way, I have watched that halftime show probably about 50 times at this point, not even exaggerating. I think it's my favorite halftime show up to date. For a hot minute, it was neck and neck with Beyonce's halftime show, but I think I like this one more actually. I can't stop watching it. I've like memorized the moves as if I'm gonna be auditioning as their backup dancers or something. But anyways, the second time around, I did remember to put powder underneath. The one I used is the original Dermablend loose setting powder. This one is my favorite to use under foundation. It's very finely milled. One thing I noticed, and I'm pretty sure it's because of the powder, but I wasn't able to move the foundation as much as I did yesterday. As soon as I set it, I had to move fairly quickly and really like drag harder to get it to cover my face. I feel like I had to use a little bit more. I mean, I didn't measure, but it feels like I used a little bit more to cover up my entire face because it wasn't moving. I probably used the equivalent of maybe 2 pumps of foundation. I want to say it's less than that though, and I would say that this is still one layer. There were only very few areas where I would have to go back in just to add a little bit more coverage. So maybe in certain areas there's just a little bit more than one layer, but for the most part I would say that this whole base took maybe 1.25 layers. So that's it for now. I'll be checking in around the halfway point to show you what it looks like in natural lighting. So I will see you then. All right, it is 5 hours later. Is there something bothering you, Millie? The foundation is holding on really well. I'm not overly oily or greasy or anything like that. Yesterday, around the 6-hour mark, my nose on this side starting to separate just a little bit. I can see that it's starting to get a little bit oily and it kind of wants to separate, but it hasn't done it just yet. That crease on my smile line is still right there. But it's weird because the crease on my forehead isn't showing today and yesterday it did. So like these two switched, which is peculiar, but okay. Everywhere else though, I would say looks pretty good. I think showing this in natural lighting proves my point that even though I'm not technically wearing a lot of foundation, the coverage that it gives me is the equivalent of 2 layers of what I used to think a full coverage foundation was. Like when I think about Estee Lauder Double Wear, Maybelline Super Stay, Urban Decay Stay Naked, those are all full coverage to me, but this is above that. Even within the umbrella of full coverage, there's definitely different tiers of it, and this is higher than all of those. It's almost as if I'm wearing Tarte Shape Tape all over my face. But one thing I do appreciate is even though this is full coverage, it feels really lightweight, and the fact that I had to use so little to get it to be this amount of coverage is really great. For every single foundation that I can remember, I need at least 2 coats to get to this. I have a lot more to say, but I don't want to sprinkle all my thoughts throughout the video. I kind of want to leave the bulk of them at the end of this video when I give my final thoughts. So I think this is it for this check-in. I will see you at the 10-hour mark. All right, it is over 10 hours later now. I think as a whole, my base looks really good. Today at the 5-hour mark, I said that in the nose region, it looks like it's about to separate. It did a little bit, not so much on the sides of my nose, but more so in the cracks of it, like the crevice. On my smile line, it has settled a little bit, but that's fairly easy to touch up. You could just take a little puff and kind of redistribute. As far as the oiliness on my face, I think only on my nose region really it's a little shinier than I would like, but everywhere else I'm totally fine with. In my last wear test, I ran out of blotting sheets, so I actually got new ones. I've never tried these, so this is gonna be kind of a first impressions. I'll link them below, but these are the Elena Natural Bamboo Charcoal Oil Absorbing Face Sheets. This is the size of my original sheets. These are the Live Fresh Natural Oil Absorbing Sheets. You can see that my old ones are a lot bigger than the new ones I got, so that tells me I might have to use more of these. But I'm gonna go ahead and blot half my face just so that you can see a side-by-side comparison of what it looks like after 10 hours and what it looks like if you touch up a little bit. All right, so this side of my face is blotted. You can see on my chin, my skin is peeking through, like the blotting paper picked up quite a bit of the foundation and it transferred off. And also in the crevice of my nose right here, you can see that it's been removed. But that area I kind of don't care too much about because you have to really like stretch your nose for people to see that. But when my nose is just in place, it's not really noticeable. There's a little bit of wear and tear in the T-zone. But I think that after over 10 hours, it still looks pretty good. So my final thoughts, I do really like this foundation. I think that people with combo skin could like this as well, just because the skin around my acne, like I said before, it can be a little bit crusty and a little bit dry, but the foundation didn't pick up on that, which I really liked. Usually when it comes to high-end products, I'm pretty picky because something has to be pretty great for me to justify a higher price point. For $36, I think that this is a reasonable price. Smashbox is considered a high-end brand, so I don't think that the price is completely outrageous. And because this is so full coverage, just a very small amount will go a very long way. Like this is gonna last you a long time. And another thing I wanted to add earlier, but I just forgot, I put powder underneath my foundation today, and I don't feel like it did anything. It didn't really help. It didn't make it last longer. It looks pretty much the same. So I actually would say don't use powder for this, just because it is so matte. And also I felt like with having powder underneath, I actually had to add a little bit more foundation, because with the powder underneath, I just wasn't able to drag the foundation and stretch it as much as I did on the first day. It wasn't buffing in my skin quite the same way. Wherever I applied it, it kind of just would set there and I wasn't able to maneuver it. So I actually would say skip powder underneath and just go in with primer. I hope that this review was helpful, and if it was, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment down below what foundation I should try next. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.